going to do a quick video on percent basics. And in order to understand percents, it's really best just to start with a question. Which is greater, 20% of 80 or 80% of 20? Now, everyone should have some basic understanding of what a percentage is. But I'm not sure if that's entirely true, if everyone actually does. So what I'm going to do is this. I'm going to take a look at 20% of 80. Now, this bar right here represents 100%. And now, in order to get an idea of what that means in context of this question, I'm going to say this bar represents the number 80. 100% of 80 is 80. Obviously, the whole thing of 80 is 80. Now, what I did down here is I broke up this bar into, let's say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 bars. Well, if I have 100%, and I'm going to break it into 10 bars, that means that each little bar is worth 10%. So, I also know that this whole thing is worth 80. Which means each little bar is going to be, well, let's see, if the whole thing is worth 80, and I have 10 little portions, each little piece has to be worth 8. And if you don't believe me, oops, that's not an 8, that's a 9. I don't know how that 9 got there. If you don't believe me, count 8, 16, 24, 32, 40, 48, 50, 56, 64, 72, and 80, so I am correct. Now, I also said that each little bar was worth 10%. 10%, 10%, 10%, and I could do this 10 times to, I guess I will do this 10 times, to illustrate that I am not lying. This is still worth 100%. So 20% would be these two bars. 20% of the total, this whole big thing is the total, would be 20% of 80, which is 16. So 20% of 80 equals 16. Now I said 80% of 20. Well, let's see. Now what I'm doing now is I'm going to change this bar. It's still 100%, but this bar is now worth 20. So now I need 80%. So I'm going to have to divide this up. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And I'd like to point out that these bars all should be equal in size, and you can clearly see that they're not, because I was drawing this by hand. I really should have used a ruler, which I did have access to, and I could have done that very easily, but I didn't, so I apologize. Anyway, moving on. So each one of these little bars is worth 10%, 10%, etc., 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 all the way to the end, and that would be 100%. Now, I want 80% of 20. Well, that means I'm going to need 10, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, 80. I'm going to need all the way to here. But how much is 10% of 20? Well, that means I'd take 20, and I want to find 10% of it. So I'm going to have to divide that by 10, because each little bar is going to be worth something, and that's 2. Let's see, 2. Why isn't that working? 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Well, if you listen to what I said before, I got to here and I said 16. So 80% of 20 was equal to 16. And you can see that was my 80%. Interestingly enough, if I had just looked at this, this would have been worth 20% of 20, which you can see is obviously 4. And if I wanted 80%, well, I could just take my total, which was 20, and subtract 4, and I still would have ended up with 16. So you can see that the two answers are the same. I'm going to throw in one other piece of information which you might find interesting. What if I had 35% of 40? Well, once again, my total is 40, and if I break this up into 10 bars, and once again, my apologies, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, ooh, that's terrible, that's egregious here, that error, oh, still not good, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, well, I think what you'll see here is now you know that these are each 10%, and 10% of 40 should be 4, because 4 10 times is 40. Now I want 35. That's 30, so 30% would be 4, 8, 12, would be 12. And if I want 35%, well, I know 10% of 40 was 4, or is 4. So that means half of that, 5% of 40, must be 2. So if I want 35%, I'd say 30% equals 12. 5% equals 2. So 35% would equal 14. I'm going to stop there. I am actually going to do more videos. But this is a very, very, very basic introduction to percentages. And the last thing I want to point out about percentages, so I know I decided to stop, but the last thing I want to point out is this. Percent means per 100, like a century is 100. So a lot of times people say 80%, well, that's 80 per 100. It's actually a division. And that's it. All right. I will see you soon.